Good morning, my little nuggets. Today's grammar mini lesson is going to build on your previous lesson, which was on identifying nouns, and we learned about how nouns are people, places, things, or ideas or concepts, states of being. Today, we're going to focus on different types of nouns. Now, is anyone ever going to walk up to you in the street and say, hey, is that a collective noun or a compound noun? No, nobody's ever going to ask you that. But as we learn to build more complex sentence structures, you're going to need to be able to identify nouns in different types of ways in order to build those sentences. So that's why it's so important that you will be able to identify and classify nouns. So today we're going to look at a couple different pairs and some different types of nouns. So the first type that we're going to look at is going to be common and proper. Every noun, no matter what, is always going to be classified as either common or proper. Okay? Similarly, every noun can also be classified as abstract or concrete. So you have an either or choice for the first two. The last two that we're going to talk about today, they might be, they might not be. These are not an either or choice. So we're going to look at collective nouns and what those are, and also compound nouns. As well as identifying and classifying at the end, you should be able to give your own examples of the different types, and you should be able to tell the difference between plural and collective nouns. This becomes very important as we learn some of our other grammar rules. So let's start with the basics, the one that we are probably most familiar with, common versus proper nouns. Common nouns are very general. That's the key word that you want to remember with them. They are general. They can name any one of a group of people, places, things, or ideas. For example, if I say the word road, okay, you all know what I'm talking about, but you don't know exactly which road. Sometimes we need to be more specific, sometimes we don't. So this is an example of a very general noun. Notice it's not capitalized. Proper nouns, on the other hand, they refer to something very specific. It's a brand name or the actual name of a place, person, thing, or idea. So to go with our previous example, road, if I wanted to make that more specific, I could say Courthouse Road or Panther Pride Drive or Route 1. Any of those nouns would be capitalized. And you can see on the slide here, Courthouse Road is capitalized because it's specific. I'm referring to a unique place. So that's how you're going to tell the difference between common and proper nouns. One common mistake that I see many students make when they first work on capitalizing proper nouns is we have a tendency to confuse proper with adding an adjective or making a noun more concrete. Sometimes when you make a noun more specific, it doesn't necessarily make a noun proper. So for example, this is some student work where the student has tried to make a proper noun. Well, a cupcake. Sure, cupcake's very general. It could be any type of cupcake. But the student here has tried to make it more specific by adding the word chocolate. Everyone loves a chocolate cupcake, right? So why isn't this proper? It's not proper and it should not be capitalized because you don't have a specific brand. You don't know the exact type. In fact, there can be many different types of chocolate cupcakes in the world. The same applies for the next example, the truck. In this case, the student added an adjective, the blue truck. Well, that's great, but I'm still not going to capitalize it because I still don't know what type of truck. Am I talking about a Ford or am I talking about a Chevy? So again, this isn't capitalized. The same applies for the last example, a football player. This student has made the noun more specific by saying which position. So they say quarterback. But there are many different quarterbacks in the league, right? So we're not going to capitalize that because we're not referring to a very specific person, place, or a brand name that would make this a proper noun. So watch out for that when you try this for the first time. Here's an example of one way that you could revise it. Notice for cupcake, I used a brand name, Hostess. That's a very specific brand of cupcake, so I would capitalize. In the second example, I made it a Chevy. Now we know a specific brand of truck that we're talking about. For the last one, football player, instead of just saying quarterback, the person could say the quarterback Eli Manning. And Eli Manning, of course, is a unique person, and so his name would be capitalized as proper noun. All right, take a minute and look at this chart. What I want you to try and do in your notes is I want you to try and complete the chart. Now you'll notice there are holes in the chart. Every other line has you going back and forth providing an appropriate common noun that relates to the proper noun or a proper noun that relates to the common noun. So for example, I'll do the first one with you. We have the common noun spot, it's empty. In the proper noun spot, we have Virginia. Well, what is Virginia? What would be a more general term for Virginia? If you guess state, that would be correct. You could also say location, and then I would write this on the left side of the chart. One more example. If you look at number 2, the situation is reversed. I've been provided with a common noun, country, because it's very general and it's nonspecific. And I need to come up with a more specific one that I will capitalize. So maybe I would choose, let's say Ireland, okay? And then I would capitalize Ireland and write it in the spot. Go ahead and pause this and see how you do. Welcome back. We're ready to move on. Now your answers will vary from what I came up with, but the important thing to double check yourself on, make sure that all your nouns in the left-hand column are general and make sure that none of them are capitalized. So you can see for Virginia, I came up with state. For country, I came up with Italy. Italy is a specific country, so it is capitalized. For number 3, I was given Atlantic, and I said Atlantic Ocean. You could have said Atlantic Shore, Atlantic Seaboard, Atlantic Coast. Anything like that would have worked well in a common noun spot. For number 4, I was given the common noun river. You could have made this specific in a number of ways. I chose to put Potomac River. Notice both parts of the noun are capitalized because they're a proper compound noun. You might have put Mississippi River, okay, Missouri River, anything like that you would have capitalized. Number 5, I put newspaper for the Washington Post. For number 6, city is Dumfries. For number 7, this was probably one of the more difficult ones on here. You were given Boy Scouts of America, correct? And then you had to ask yourself, well, what is it? What would be a more general term for that? You might have come up with group. I came up with club. You might have come up with organization. All different types of choices there. Okay. For 8, I have athlete. I chose Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. For 9, book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Notice that book title is italicized and capitalized. Notice and the, and that's because in titles, we don't capitalize the non-essential words like conjunctions and articles, the. Remember, you learned about the 3 articles last class, a, and the. The last one, band, I chose Led Zeppelin because I'm an old person, but they're still the best band ever, so, check them out. Okay, your turn number 2. This is going to give you a little bit more practice with common and proper nouns. So what I'm asking you to do on this slide is I want you to come up with pairs of your own. Whereas in the last chart, I gave you one or the other. This one, you're totally free to come up with whatever you wish. Okay, if you have a hard time with this, you probably need to go back and review your proper nouns. So you can see the examples here, baseball player, could be Babe Ruth, teacher, Miss Mrs. Notice again, proper nouns are all capitalized. You can take a second and pause this and see what you can come up with. Now that you're ready to move on, obviously your answers will be very different than what I've come up with, but this is an example roughly of what should be on your paper. So I came up with the pair town and Valant, which is actually the town where I grew up. For number 2, I came up with television show and The Walking Dead. One question you might have is frequently we see TV show written instead of television. And the reason why TV is capitalized is not because it's a proper noun, it's because it's an abbreviation. It's an acronym of sorts. So either way, that would still be a common noun. And then Walking Dead is the proper noun. Best show ever. Number 3, makeup. So I named a brand of popular makeup, CoverGirl. Cupcake, we have again our Hostess Cupcakes example. And truck, a Chevy. The next choice that you're going to have anytime you're classifying a noun, every noun is either common or proper. Every noun is also either abstract or concrete. Well, what does that mean? An abstract noun, we say something is abstract when it doesn't physically exist. You can't physically experience it. It is not tangible. Okay, it does not have matter. So abstract nouns are nouns that convey ideas, feelings, qualities, characteristics of things. So examples would be freedom. You could see someone who is free, but freedom itself does not physically exist. You can't, walk in a store and pick up freedom. Okay, it's impossible. Same with well being, happiness, beauty. And let's talk about beauty. You can see someone who is beautiful, right? But does beauty actually physically exist? No, it does not. It's a concept, it's a quality. And a good way to approach this is most people don't always agree on what abstract nouns entail. For example, what I think is beautiful, you might not think is beautiful. So people have different concepts of abstract nouns. People have different concepts of beauty, different interpretations. Another good example of proper abstract nouns that you might come across are the names of religions or philosophies or schools of thought. So, for example, you see here we have Buddhism, and that's capitalized because it's a very specific type of worldview. Okay, you can't actually touch Buddhism. You might see a Buddhist, okay, a person who believes in it and follows it and adheres to those teachings, but you can't actually touch, smell, hear Buddhism. It's not possible. So if abstract nouns are things that you cannot see or physically experience, concrete nouns are the opposite. A good way to think of this is to look at the wall of the classroom. Okay? You can touch the concrete wall. You can smell it. Okay? It probably smells like paint. Okay? You could lick it, which would be disgusting, but you could in fact taste a concrete wall. Um, when you hit it, you can hear sound. Concrete means that something can physically be perceived by one or more of your senses. It physically exists, it has tangible form. So there are obvious examples like your desk, your chair. We don't have difficulty with those. A cloud, yes, I can see a cloud. Poison ivy, yes, I can see poison ivy. Leaves, I can see. Thunder, careful here. You cannot see thunder, but you can hear it. Okay? So it is in fact concrete. Silk, yogurt, and Sarah. Concrete means it actually physically exists. You can smell it, taste it, touch it, feel it. Okay? Let's see how we do with this one. Okay, all of the nouns here, with the exception of Richmond, Buddhism, iPod, and internet, all the nouns except for those four are common. Notice iPod is interesting. iPod, if something is branded lowercase, it's generally acceptable to keep it lowercase even though it's proper. So keep that in mind with brand names. All right, take this and sort it out. Make two lists on your paper. See if you can put all the concrete ones in the concrete category and all the abstract ones in the abstract category. Uh, on your mark, get set, pause this video and see how you do. Okay, let's check your knowledge and see how you did. For concrete noun, you should have had hummingbird, teacher, river, Richmond, telephone, iPod, ocean, hallway, tree. Now take a minute and look at my list. There's something wrong with my list. See if you can identify it. I'll give you a hint. It has to do with proper versus common nouns. Which nouns should be lowercase and not uppercase? Yes, that's right. Telephone should be lowercase because it's not a brand name. Ocean should also be lowercase because we're not saying what ocean. And hallway, we are not giving the name of the street of the hallway. So in fact, all of those should be lowercase because they are common nouns. One question that people frequently get tripped up on this one is Richmond. Richmond is concrete because you can physically go to Richmond. It is a physical place. Let's look at our abstract ones and see if we did better there. Abstract, knowledge. You can see someone who has a great deal of knowledge, but you can't actually see their knowledge. It's not like they carry it around on their head or in a backpack. It doesn't physically exist. There's our Buddhism example, which you should have got since we just reviewed it. Remember, religions are almost always going to be abstract when they're presented. Heroism. You might be able to see someone who is a hero, but no one in this room would agree on what heroism looks like or smells like, and that's because it doesn't physically exist. The same applies for love, self-confidence, competitiveness, and humor. Okay. On this side, notice internet is capitalized. Anytime you write internet, you should capitalize it because it is in fact a specific entity. It is a specific thing and it is proper. So always make sure that you don't forget to capitalize internet. Okay, now to our last batches of nouns. Unlike abstract and concrete, common and proper, your noun may be collective, it might not be. It may be compound, it might not be. This is not an either or choice. So while every noun will be either common or proper and either abstract or concrete, a noun might be collective, it might not, it might be compound, it might not. So let's look at these two C words, collective nouns. These are words that even though they're not plural, they refer to a group of people, okay? So these are singular nouns that refer to more than one. So for example, team. Team, there is only one team, but there are multiple people who make up that team and participate in that team. So that makes it a collective noun. Another common one would be family. There's only one family here because it's not families, okay? It's not plural, but a family refers to more than one person, okay? Tribe, same concept. There's only one tribe, there's no S, but it does refer to a group of people. Delegation. Delegation is a fancy word. You often hear it used in politics. A delegation is a group of people that goes somewhere for a specific purpose. So delegation is a singular noun that's actually referring to a group of people. So all of these examples here, we would say they are collective. A good way to remember this is see how it starts with collect. Think of collection. In a collection, you have multiple things. That'll help you remember that a collective noun refers to multiple things or multiple people. Compound nouns are very different, but they're usually very easy to spot. And that's because compound nouns are made up of two or more words. So it's not always two. It can be three, it can be four or five. Sometimes it can be very long, but it has to be two or more words that are used together to form nouns. And they can be written a number of different ways. So for example, if you see here, firefighter, when words have been paired together over time, gradually they merge and they kind of smush together, and there's no space and there's no hyphen, there's nothing in between them. They're just together. Okay? So for example, fireside, firefighter. Those are examples of compound nouns where they are all just one word. Sometimes words appear together, but they aren't smushed up next to one another. And a good example of that is the word fire drill. Okay, the words go together, but there is a space between them. Still a compound noun. Be careful though. Notice fire is not an adjective, it's another noun, right? If I said the hard drill, okay, that would not be a compound noun because hard would be an adjective that's describing drill. And the last example, these are often very easy to spot. If you have a hyphenated word, hyphens are these little dashes that you see that are used to merge related words together into a group. Sister-in-law, brother-in-law, mother-in-law, all of those types of words we would say are compound nouns because the hyphens are used to link them together. So English being the crazy language that there is, there really is no reason why some words are hyphenated and some words not, and frequently what words are hyphenated changes over time. So always refer to your spell check, and when in doubt, Google it. You can usually find the right answer. Be careful, okay? Just because a noun is plural, that doesn't mean it's collective. Okay, for example, here's how you can figure this out. Look at the noun desks. If you're not sure whether a noun is plural or whether it's collective, get rid of the plural and see what's left over. If I cross out the S, I am just left with desk. Desk on its own, singular, doesn't refer to more than one thing. So we would say desk is only a common, concrete plural noun. It's not collective because even though it's plural, it doesn't refer to more than one thing if we get rid of that plural. Okay? Whereas if you look at the noun forests, again, another common noun, it's also plural. But again, if I get rid of the S, that'll help me figure out whether or not it's a collective noun or not. When I get rid of the S, I'm left with forest. Now I ask myself, does forest, the word forest, refer to more than one thing? And the answer is yes, a forest is a group of trees. So forest refers to more than one noun, even without the plural s. And so therefore, forest is collective, whereas desk was not. Let's look at one more example. Let's look at trees. Okay, at first I think it might be collective because I see that it's plural. But remember, I double check myself by getting rid of the s, and I look at what I have left. If I get rid of the s, I just have tree. Does the noun tree refer to more than one thing? Nope, a tree is just a tree. So I would just say that this is plural. It's not collective because it doesn't refer to more than one thing. Now let's look at teams. If I look at teams, all right, it's definitely plural. So I get rid of the s and look at what I have left. Team. Does the noun team, singular, by itself refer to more than one person or thing? Yep, a team is definitely a group of people, okay, like a basketball team or a baseball team or a football team or a lacrosse team. So team is collective even when it's singular, and that's the ultimate test. Speaking of tests, let's see how you can do with this. All right, there are 5 sentences here. Each of the sentences are going to contain at least one collective or compound noun. So for each one of these sentences, I want you to try and write the collective or compound noun in each sentence. Then tell me whether it is collective or compound. Some of the sentences have more than one compound or collective noun. I would also point out that many of the sentences have just normal nouns that are not collective or compound. You can ignore those. For example, in number 1, the word director and actor are both nouns, right? But actor is definitely not compound, and neither is director. Actor is also not collective because it doesn't refer to more than one thing, and director is not collective, so it doesn't refer to more than one thing. So in writing down my answers for number 1, I wouldn't need to list actor and director. Even though they're nouns, they are not collective or compound. Next, I would look at the first part of the sentence, playwright. That one's tempting because it sounds like there are 2 words there, right? Play is definitely a word, but write, does that stand on its own? Definitely not. It's not spelled W-R-I-T-E. It's not 2 nouns put together. So this would just be a regular noun. It's not a compound noun. And the last noun I see is Louis Valdez. Now, Louis Valdez, I definitely need to write down because he is compound. So I would write down Luis Valdez, compound, because first name and last name, a person's full name is always a compound noun because you have 2 nouns that are referring to one person. All right, now that you know how this works, go ahead and pause and do 2, 3, 4, and 5 on your own. Remember, you're only writing down the compound and collective nouns. Welcome back. Let's see how you did. Here are the answers. Number 1, we did together. I've highlighted the compound nouns in yellow and collective nouns in light teal. The nouns that are just underlined are nouns that are not collective or compound. On your paper, you should have written Louis Valdez, and you would have written compound. For number 2, audience is collective because there are many individuals that make up an audience. Actors, on the other hand, is not collective. It's just plural. If I get rid of the S, I'm left with the word actor. Well, I've already established up here that actor doesn't refer to more than one person. So it's not collective, and you should not have it written down on your paper. I should have written down on my paper, in addition to audience, the compound noun standing ovation. Standing ovation, standing tells you what type of ovation or what type of applause it was. So these 2 words go together, even though they have a space between them. This is a good example of a compound noun. Why did I not add thunderous? Thunderous is just an adjective describing the standing ovation. It's telling you how loud it was. So it is not a noun, it's actually an adjective. So we wouldn't include it as part of our compound noun. And number three, flock. Flock is definitely a collective noun because a flock consists of more than one bird, right? So that is our collective noun. That should be written on your paper. Canadian geese should also be written on your paper because it's a proper compound noun. We're telling you a very specific species of geese. Okay, so that should be written down on your paper as compound. South is a noun and winter is a noun, but those shouldn't be on your paper because they're not collective, they're not compound. Number four, family is collective because, as we learned from our review, it refers to multiple individuals, even though it's singular. You should also have on your paper hide and seek and summer evenings. That's because both of these are composed of more than one word. They are compound nouns. This is the name of the game that they are playing, and this is the time and place where this is happening, summer evenings. For number five, cluster. This was a hard one. Cluster is collective. A cluster of something means that you have more than one, right? So cluster is indeed collective. Flowers, on the other hand, you should not have on your paper because flowers, if I get rid of the S and I look at just flower, does flower on its own refer to more than one? Nope. So I know that this is just a plural noun, not a collective. I should also have on my paper, in addition to cluster, brother-in-law. Notice the hyphens. That is a good example of a compound noun. And bedside table. Okay, this is telling you the type of table. And this is actually a doozy. Together, these two nouns make a noun, and bedside itself is actually composed of more than one word. So this is one that you should definitely not have passed by. Bedside table. Okay. All right, that is the end of today's mini lesson. Now that you've learned about the different classifications of nouns, we want to check your understanding of plural and singular, common and proper, collective and plural, compound, concrete versus abstract. So to show me what you know, you can take your notes and go to Quia, and you're going to log in and you're going to be taking the assessment titled Nouns 1.2 colon Classifying Nouns. Remember, some of the questions on these post-assessment items, they may not give you a grade instantaneously, and that's because it being grammar, sometimes I have to actually correct it by hand. So keep that in mind as you are going through the assessment. When you're done, it's always very important to evaluate your progress. Always stop and ask yourself when you go over the feedback at the end of the assessment, what types of nouns gave you problems? That'll let you know what you need to review before next class period. This is also a good way of making sure that you're reviewing as you go leading up to an assessment rather than waiting for, trying to cram in all this information at the last second before I have a quiz or a test. The second question on this slide is really very important. Always be asking yourself continuously, all right, this is what I did. How can I review? How can I improve? When you're done with Quia, please check the agenda board because you more than likely have a homework assignment and check to see what that is. If you're waiting for other people to finish, you could make good proactive use of your time by getting started on that homework. That way you don't have any to do at home. All right, guys, feel free to raise your hand and ask me if you have any questions about anything. I'm here to help you. See you next time. Bye, Nuggets.